All right, we're near 90 participants, and while everybody is still coming in, hello everybody, and welcome to the Annual Report 2022 webinar. Thank you for tuning in from around the world, and once again, please do feel free to use the chat function to introduce yourself. We'd love to hear from you and love to have you connect with each other at our event today. My name is Diep Nguyen. I am the External Relations and Advocacy Analyst for the UN Trust Fund to End Violence Against Women. Every year, the UN Trust Fund delivers its annual report that captures the results and achievements that its grantee partners led throughout the year. It's always an important occasion to reflect, recognize, and celebrate the lifeline work that civil society and women's rights organizations lead to bring changes to the lives of millions of women and girls, despite increasingly challenging contexts. Today, we'll hear firsthand from a number of grantees about how they have been leading these bold, creative initiatives. Before we start, I would just like to remind it all that all participants who are joining are on mute to avoid audio issues during the presentation portion of the meeting. Please feel free to use the chat function to send through comments and questions and also introduction. Please also be advised that this meeting is being recorded and will be made available later on for a wider audience. Our colleagues also have started live tweeting now about our event on Twitter, and you can find us at UN Trust Fund Eval and use the hashtag UNTFAR22 to engage with us in real time and continue the conversation beyond this webinar. Now that we have covered basic information, I'd like to start with a quick question to all of our participants today. How do you remember 2022? Especially in conjunction with your work in ending violence against women? Please share in the chat 3 words or phrases to describe your experiences and feminist activism in the year 2022. We would love to hear from you. And now I'd like to give the floor to Abigail "Abby" Erickson, the Chief of the UN Trust Fund, for an official welcome and opening remarks. Abby, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Zia. Good morning, good afternoon, and perhaps even good evening to all of you. My name is Abby Erickson, and I'm the Chief of the UN Trust Fund to End Violence Against Women. And I am very, very pleased to welcome you today to our webinar covering the results of the UN Trust Fund's annual report for 2022. So a big thank you and a very warm welcome for joining us today far and wide. The 2022 annual report has recently been made available on our website, and we really encourage you to explore the report and to learn about the transformative and life-changing work undertaken by our UN Trust Fund grantees over the past year. Today, we have the opportunity to present the results and achievements of 2022, and in particular, to hear directly from our 5 grantee partners across the globe who will share their impressive accomplishments. As the newly appointed Chief of the UN Trust Fund, I wish that I could portray a more optimistic landscape, but sadly, that is not where we are at. Instead, I must reflect the stark reality that violence against women and girls remains a deeply entrenched global crisis that knows no boundary. However, there is a clear message of hope, determination, and resilience to share with you today, which shines through the work of the UN Trust Fund grantee partners all over the world, many who are operating in extremely challenging environments. Overall, to date, the UN Trust Fund has enabled and implemented the implementation of 646 civil society initiatives across 140 countries and territories. In 2022 alone, the UN Trust Fund managed a grants portfolio of 186 projects aimed at preventing and ending violence against women and girls across 70 countries and territories, 5 regions, with grants totaling over $87 million. Our grant recipients were primarily civil society organizations, with the majority, 62%, being women's rights organizations. Our 2022 annual report showcases the transformative impact driven by our grantee partners throughout the past year. It is our partners' courage and resolve that enables the women and girls they serve to imagine and pursue a better, safer, and more equal world. I'd like to once again highlight that our partners' achievements are at the heart of this report, and every initiative that reaches women and girls is a step towards that better future that we all seek. Thank you once again for joining us today, and I will now hand back to my colleague, Ziap Nguyen, who will take us through the webinar. Thank you, Ziap.
Thank you so much, Abby. Now let's start our event with a short video which summarizes some key achievements in 2022. The footage is authentic, provided directly by our partners, and we hope this may give you a sense of their work and results from the very grassroots level to the overall impact they generate collectively. Please take it away.
In 2022, the compounding impact of protracted, complex, and overlapping crises around the world put women and girls at increased risk of violence. Despite emerging challenges, civil society and women's rights organizations continued to prevent and address all forms of violence against women and girls, with the support of the UN Trust Fund to End Violence Against Women. In 2022, the UN Trust Fund grantees reached 47 million people, including over 24 million women and girls. Among them, over 430,000 women and girls directly benefited from their projects, including 81,000 survivors of violence. Women and girls in all their diversity deserve the right to live a life free from violence. The UN Trust Fund is committed to leaving no woman or girl behind. In Iraq, the Baghdad Women Organization provided access to legal, medical, psychosocial, recreational, and economic support services to internally displaced women and girl survivors of violence. In Argentina, Fundación Ondes built the capacity of government officials, police, and judicial officers on the different forms of violence affecting lesbian, trans, and cisgender women and girls. Through prevention activities, improving access to multi-sectoral services, and implementing laws and policies, the UN Trust Fund supports a wide range of initiatives. In Kenya, the Forum for Women in Development and Democracy and Justice provided support for survivors of human trafficking. The support services included access to legal representation, shelter, and emergency business support. In Albania, Iamane, Switzerland held discussions with community members to raise their awareness about domestic and gender-based violence. In India, the Martha Farrell Foundation empowered women domestic workers to lead women to advocate for stronger workplace protections from sexual violence. In today's ever-changing context, the UN Trust Fund and its grantees continue to work tirelessly to meet the needs of survivors and put an end to all forms of violence against women and girls. Join us in empowering women around the world. Join us in supporting the transformative change created by civil society and women's rights organizations. Join us in making a violence-free world a reality for all women and girls.
Thank you. Very powerful. I would imagine like a big applause because of the virtual modality. I know that we can't really hear it, but every time I have to say we get to work on a collage video like this, it brings to our team at the UN Trust Fund a lot of pride in being able to support the lifeline work of our grantee partners and to further amplify this work worldwide. So thank you so much for sharing these footage with us and allowing us to showcase your work. I also see many words and phrases shared in the group chat and echo the messages in this video about protracted and overlapping crises, but also messages of hope, like we never give up on ending violence against women and girls in all circumstances. So thank you so much for sharing, and we look forward to more engagements throughout this entire event. For this webinar, we are very happy to introduce you to a Pecha Kucha inspired storytelling format of presentations. Our panelists will not respond to a specific question, but rather walk us through a journey of their organization's work in ending violence against women in 2022. Each slide of the presentation is set for 20 seconds, and each story will flow through 20 slides. We hope that you enjoyed this as much as we have been preparing it with our partners. On today's agenda is hearing directly from our grantee partners about their ending violence against women and girls journey through different themes in an eventful year before my colleague Adina will recap the key results and impact of the UN Trust Fund and its grantee partners in the year 2022. I am thrilled to introduce you to all 5 speakers today from 5 different civil society and women's rights organizations who will speak on various themes that have emerged throughout 2022 and brought inspiring results of key adaptations to meet the needs of women and girls. We'll get to travel a little bit with our speakers today. Speaking about operating in overlapping crises, which required immediate context-based adaptations, and in this case, to maintain access to justice for survivors of violence, we'll listen to Claudine Sangho, coordinator of Dynamique des Femmes Juristes, or DFJ, connecting from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Then we'll move to Tunisia to hear from Hedia Belhaj Youssef, a violence and technology program responsible at the Center of Arab Women for Training and Research, or Qatar. Hedia will tell us Qatar's story on using technology facilitated solutions to improve access to services for women and girls living with disabilities. Connecting from Bangladesh, Mamoon Rashid, Senior Development Manager of Badabon Sangho, will tell us about how the small women-led organizations connects and co-creates with fisherfolk groups and women's groups to protect their water sources and livelihoods in the context of aggressive land grabbing. Sylvia Perez, the legal representative of Sierra, will tell their journey of introducing a horticultural initiative that brought its important impact to their work in ending violence against women and girls in Mexico who face intersecting forms of discrimination. And lastly, we'll connect with Livia Zotria from Albania as the project manager of Aleanca LGBT, who will tell us about their efforts to create safe spaces for LGBT women and girls in the context of rising backlash against women's rights movement. Now, on to our first presenter. Claudine Sangho is the coordinator of Dynamique des Femmes Juristes, or DFJ. The organization remained operational through multiple overlapping crises, from the compounding impact of COVID-19 to the state of emergency, volcanic eruptions, and the ongoing conflict happening in the country. Claudine will walk us through how DFJ adapted to respond to these changes. Claudine, the floor is yours.
Oui, merci. Bonjour à tout le monde. Je suis Claudine Sangho, bien sûr, comme ça a été présenté. Mon organisation Dynamique des Femmes Juristes est basée à Goma, à l'est de la République démocratique du Congo. Les crises prolongées, superposées et de fois négligées ont paralysé le secteur social et économique, ainsi que le pesanteur de normes socioculturelles négatives, reste l'un des défis majeurs pour l'élimination de la violence faite à la femme et à la fille dans la partie est de la RDC. Depuis l'année 2020, la résurgence de plusieurs conflits armés dans la province du Nord Kivu, entraînant la surmilitarisation de la province, la montée des déplacements forcés des populations, vivant dans une forte promiscuité dans des sites de déplacés souvent négligés, sans installations adéquates, sans aide ni moyens de survie nécessaires, a amplifié les risques de violences faites aux femmes et aux filles et réduit l'impact des actions de prévention et de réponse. Les interventions humanitaires qui sont également longues et intermittentes face à ces crises, surtout celles liées à la 10e riposte de l'épidémie de la maladie à virus Ebola, réalisées dans les communautés déjà rendues vulnérables par le contexte sont aussi à la base des exploitations et des abus sexuels généralisés commis par certains acteurs humanitaires contre les femmes et les filles. Sur fond de toutes ces crises et dans un contexte socio-économique fragile, dominé par la pauvreté, dans une société où les normes sociales sont souvent discriminatoires et néfastes aux femmes et aux filles, la pandémie de COVID-19 est venue encore amplifier les violences faites aux femmes et aux filles, tout en montrant les limites des capacités des organisations à faire face à la pandémie et à maintenir les interventions visant l'élimination de la violence faite aux femmes et aux filles. Face à ces défis, la dynamique des femmes juristes d'EFJ, mon organisation, a accompli différentes réalisations, mais également a tiré des leçons à partir de ces réalisations. Pour ce qui est, par exemple, des accomplissements, vu les crises et le contexte fragile, nous avons procédé à des révisions et adaptations de nos politiques, de nos procédures institutionnelles, ainsi que de nos approches d'intervention. Nous étions obligés de renforcer l'utilisation de la nouvelle technologie de l'information et de la communication. Nous étions également obligés de renforcer des partenariats avec les organisations et mouvements au niveau communautaire. Nous avons renforcé l'utilisation de nouvelles technologies dans le fonctionnement au quotidien au niveau institutionnel. Par exemple, nous organisons des activités de prévention et de réponse aux violences faites aux femmes et aux filles à distance. Nous utilisons également des logiciels de gestion institutionnelle qui nous permettent d'assurer la gestion de l'organisation à distance. Nous avons également promu des équipements de télétravail, un système de téléphonie fixe qui limite le contact entre les personnes, ainsi de suite. Nous avons même élargi nos secteurs d'intervention pour plus de complémentarité de nos actions d'élimination des violences faites aux femmes et aux filles dans une approche centrée sur le droit. Et nous favorisons le partage d'expériences pour plus d'adaptation sur base des expériences des autres organisations sœurs auxquelles nous apprenons et qui apprennent également de nous. Et parmi les leçons clés que nous avons appris que vraiment le renforcement des capacités d'action, d'adaptabilité des organisations locales, particulièrement celles dirigées par les femmes, est capital pour la durabilité des actions en faveur d'élimination des violences faites aux femmes et aux filles. Elles sont des actrices de première ligne dans la lutte contre les violences faites aux femmes et aux filles dès le déclenchement des crises. Elles sont là où les acteurs internationaux ne peuvent même pas arriver et sont là également même au départ des organisations internationales. Nous avons également appris que l'agenda de la localisation doit être accéléré et rendu concret et effectif, tout en accordant une attention particulière aux organisations dirigées par les femmes afin d'améliorer les interventions en faveur de l'élimination des violences faites aux femmes et aux filles. Dans un contexte fragile comme celle de l'Est de la RDC, les activités de préparation aux crises doivent être transversales dans toutes les interventions. Mais aussi, l'élimination des violences faites aux femmes et aux filles appelle à des actions plus intégrées, un nexus entre les actions humanitaires, celles de développement et celles de la consolidation de la paix, et une forte coordination des interventions entre les acteurs locaux et ceux internationaux. Bien sûr, nous pouvons dire que nous avons quand même accompli des réussites parce que grâce à ce projet et dans le contexte qui est le nôtre, nous avons opéré des révisions et des adaptations institutionnelles qui ont renforcé nos capacités de faire face aux crises multiformes. Il est vrai que ce processus a été relativement brusque, imposé par un contexte auquel on n'attendait pas, mais ça a été bénéfique et durable, car aujourd'hui, nous avons la possibilité d'offrir des services d'aide et de protection aux femmes et filles à distance à travers une ligne téléphonique et un logiciel adapté. Nous aidons également d'autres structures de femmes à faire de même à travers des échanges d'expériences. Mais cela n'a pas été sans difficulté. Parmi les difficultés majeures auxquelles nous avons fait face, nous avons compris que les communautés des bénéficiaires, généralement caractérisées par des femmes rurales, des filles rurales, n'étaient pas bien préparées à certaines crises, comme c'était le cas pendant la COVID-19. Cela a pris du temps aux communautés de s'adapter aux changements mais elles ont trouvé quand même bénéfique le changement auquel elles sont passées. Même au niveau de notre organisation, le personnel aussi s'adapte à des rythmes diversifiés, surtout liés à la nouvelle technologie, ce qui crée également un décalage dans le fonctionnement institutionnel et dans les interventions. Les besoins, bien sûr, sont énormes, mais nous avons un accès encore limité au financement pour répondre aux besoins urgents des femmes et des filles, surtout pour éliminer les violences faites aux femmes et aux filles lors des interventions. C'est pour ça que nous avons quelques recommandations. Nous recommandons à tous les acteurs internationaux et locaux de faire de la préparation aux crises une activité transversale, que les donateurs et les bailleurs de fonds accroissent leur redevabilité en matière de financement inclusif et sensible au genre, y compris l'agenda de la localisation, et renforcent le partenariat équitable et durable avec les organisations locales, particulièrement celles dirigées par les femmes et les organisations féministes. Enfin, que les donateurs et les bailleurs de fonds rendent transversales dans leur financement humanitaire, développement et paix, les actions de lutte contre les violences faites aux femmes et aux filles et localisent davantage ces interventions pour plus de renforcement de la résilience institutionnelle des organisations dirigées par les femmes et les organisations mixtes. Merci de votre attention.
Thank you so much, Claudine, for your intervention. It's very powerful and rich in information. I just want to quickly react and recap for all our audience as well, in terms of how DFJ has been leading this very creative and bold adaptation. And we can see how nimble the organization has been in improving policies, but also infrastructure of the organization in this very complex context. Another point that I hear from you is that the extension and the fostering of feminist alliances and the peer-to-peer capacity development activities that is very important to enhance the activities, the collective actions in DRC. And lastly, and most importantly, as you highlighted, is how the initiative and the adaptation has been very much rights-based and use the rights-based approach and very much put women at the center of the adaptation. And all of what you have been saying is really a true testament to how the investment in organizational resilience, especially to women-led organizations, as you mentioned, is key to ensuring ending violence against women work will be effective. Thank you so much once again, Claudine, for your intervention. On to the next presenter. During 2022, UN Trust Fund grantee partners led co-creation efforts with community members to plan and implement solutions to prevent and end violence against women at local level with the aim of sustaining gains beyond the project cycle. Our next speaker, Mamoun Rashid, Senior Development Manager of Badabon Sangho, who will talk us through their journey of feminist co-creation with fisher folk groups in Bangladesh. Mamoun, the floor is yours.
Thank you. In the southwest region, Rampal Mongla of Bangladesh, the public investment like thermal power plant, airport, railway, and private factories acquired the general land. And those lands are more or less the public, private land. Corporates are also setting up their public factories surrounding the public infrastructure. In addition to that, climate change-induced salinity damages the local livelihood, including the man and woman livelihood. So both of the causes, the land investment and climate change, both of the causes accelerating the displacement and internal migration and also the violence against women. This is why Badabon Sangho implementing the project confront land displacement induced violence against women and girls with support of UN Trust Fund. In fact, men and women and girls are entitled of inheritance land, but women landowners are worst victim of the land conflict, displacement, and violence. Harassment, insensitive behavior from the male members of the family, neighbors, and community. Women are being expelled from their land rights, victim of the violence. Secondly, due to the lack of the livelihood, male members are migrating to the cities and getting new jobs, new employment. but they are leaving the previous kids and wives. So the single mother, divorcee, separated number is increasing day by day. And again, the violence against women and girls are increasing. Given the context, our overall strategy were co-creation solution. We organize and mobilize women in groups and develop their leadership, organization management, and facilitate collective action. All of the ground level activities are contributing both of the protection and response side. By the way of the implementation, we tested and proven number of trainings to the group leaders, open dialogue with the union Parishad. We discuss with the police station. We organize the protest and assemblies, legal aid counseling, and finally, folk songs, which is for the awareness raising activities. In 2022, our achievement were 109 women's groups, 2 women federation are functional, and groups members are facilitating the awareness session with the folk songs. Land literacy rate increased, violence against women reporting also increased at the police station and union council. Women are able to claim their land rights. Land office and union council maintain the inheritance register. Women fisher folk groups are also getting registered with the as a cooperative society. So women fisher folk was not recognized and was not registered as a cooperative society. With the help of the co-creation solution, they are now act as a cooperative society. Most importantly, 14 women's rights organizations coming together, including the 5 indigenous rights organizations, and they formed a women land rights network, which is as a significant result of this project, the Women Land Rights Network, which is now facilitating the wider campaign against the violence against women throughout the country. The network's members are addressing not only the violence against women, they are also addressing land grabbing, individual land protection, and protecting the environmental issues also. Wider campaign plan is under development, and that will be accelerated. The women's land rights, water bodies campaign also. In relation to our learning, our long-term engagement and local presence of the women groups are very important. We found that this kind of co-creation and innovative solution by engaging people and also engaging the women and girls is very much effective, and it is their ownership within the movement building activities. They are now taking the ownership of overall activities, and which is very sustainable. In 2020, challenge was there. Our team members and our group members are getting pressure from the vested interested group. They are also, some of them are also left their job, but groups are also more active. Groups are facilitating protest, legal aid committees, and visiting police station, court. So by within the challenge, they are more and more active, connecting member with the social media, functional federation, engaging them in network, all are of success. So I said that women's land rights groups and their network are gathers group, grassroots organization who are led their own members. So feminist co-creation and solution like help desk with the police station, inheritance register, folk song, group management, collective action, all of these are the success of the project, which is only possible, which was possible with the support of the UN Trust Fund. It is important at the last and finally, I like to say that it is important to invest on feminist and local movement building solution, a small group who are working at the community level. They are the very sustainable and they can make the world free of violence. So thank you all.
Thank you so much, Mamoun. That is such a powerful and very feminist build and energy that we need today. Once again, I would just like to really react quickly to the intervention and also recap some of the very key points that I feel very powerful. and thank you, first of all, for shedding light on a much needed conversation around development, sustainability, and safety of women, which involves ending violence against women and the protection from violence, which hasn't necessarily received enough attention. I also love the fact that you mentioned the clear strategy that Badabon Sangho also initiated, including organizing women's groups, develop their leadership skills, and facilitate collective actions through feminist co-creation tools. And in turn, it also supports in responding to the rising pressure and challenges that you mentioned later. It is also very crucial that you mentioned how the larger campaigns, which leads to broader conversation around economic inequality and injustice and women's right to assets and to owning lands and their water resources, that connects to ending violence against women and girls. So this is such a great project, and we're very proud to be supporting this project. Thank you so much, Mahmoud, for walking us through this journey. I'm very happy to introduce the next presenter that we have today. In 2022, our grantee partners in Eurasia region expressed concerns over the intensification of anti-gender and anti-rights movement and increase in LGBTQ targeted crimes and attacks, exposing gender advocates, human rights defenders, and gender diverse communities to blatant violence and unfavorable environment to operate. Aleanca LGBT in Albania has been working on creating safe spaces for LGBT communities. Now we're connecting to Livia Zotria, project manager of the organization Aleanca LGBT, to talk us through their journey in 2022. Livia, take it away.
Thank you, Diab. Thank you, everyone. I will start my hopefully short presentation by mentioning one of the biggest problems that we have been facing as long-time LGBTI activists, which is lack of trust in state institutions such as police and local government. And due to this reason, we have underreported cases of hate crime and discrimination. The lack of institutional response in cases of hate crime and discrimination comes from stigmatized behavior from police and prosecutors. During 2022, our community that was already marginalized and was facing different issues, also in financial areas, was facing already issues before COVID. During 2022, the consequences of COVID have impacted especially the most marginalized groups such as transgender women. Due to this reason and due to discrimination, accessing job market has been very difficult for them. So many of our transgender women and girls have been engaged in sex work, and in the meantime, sex work is criminalized in our country. So they have been facing violence from police brutality and clients as well. One of another challenge that we are facing for the LGBT community is economic dependency from abusive families. For the ones that still live with their families, they are forced to heterosexual marriages, or they get kicked out and not financially supported anymore. Through this project, we can proudly say that we have been able to support at least 50 transgender sex workers to prevent homelessness during 2022 by reimbursing their rent. Also, we have improved healthcare for at least 20 LGBT women, especially the ones that live with HIV, and we had also 2 patients that were already in AIDS state that we prevented from catastrophic situations. We have also improved cooperation with state institutions, such Ministry of Health for the medical protocol for transgender people, the HIV clinic and the Public Institute for Health, and Municipality of Tirana for further services. Aleanca has a safe space for LGBT women since 14 years, and it runs as a community center where they can self-organize and be part of recreational activities and receive direct services. Through this center, we promote also economic inclusion for LGBT women through social enterprises and on-job training activities. For the first time, for the past 14 years through this project, we had the first staff retreat for our staff. Also, we daily work to build a strong and vibrant community leaders so they can fight themselves for a violence-free world. For the past 2 years, we have been facing a backlash with anti-LGBTI movement in Albania that has been organizing disinformation campaigns that incite hate and discrimination toward LGBTI people in general. These campaigns has been dehumanizing, especially against LGBT women, such as the executive director of Aleanca and the first lesbian couple that has 2 kids in Albania. We have had difficult cooperation with institutions like Ministry of Justice that hasn't been open to make changes in the family code in order to recognize same-sex couples. As a result, kids of same-sex couples cannot be registered in Albania. We have a difficult cooperation with Ministry of Education, regardless their duty to be part of, implementing partner to the National Action Plan on LGBTI people in Albania. Also, the anti-gender and anti-LGBTI movement, as I already mentioned, has gained more support from media and public figures and politicians, which has also made them even more stronger and even more vocal against LGBTI issues. Also, one of the biggest challenges that we have been facing since 2022 has been the fact that many young LGBTI women are leaving the country due to economic crisis and lack of rights and freedoms, which also impedes us to build strong and vibrant community leaders for them to advocate for themselves and for respecting of their own rights. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you so much, Livia, for this presentation. And may I please say that it is particularly apt for us as right now it is Pride Month in the States where our headquarters is based. And so we're very proud to hear from you and hear about the work of Aleanca LGBT.
Thank you.
I would just like to thank you again for bringing the attention about the issues and also about the intersecting forms of violence and discrimination that LGBT women and also the LGBTIQ communities as a whole have been facing. And for many of them, the home is not the safest place, and this is where they meet even more hostility and violence. And the fact that Aleanca's work has been able to provide immediate support and sometimes lifeline, especially for people living with HIV, it's extremely crucial in the context that you have been describing. The efforts that Aleanca has been creating safe space and decent workplaces is very significant to the community, I understand, because of the discrimination ongoing that creates barriers for them to have livelihoods. And I just want to point out and really spotlight the fact that you mentioned for the 14 years of existence, Aleanca LGBT has been able to create a staff retreat. And I think that is very, very important to point out, as it allows for your staff to provide quality services and quality support to beneficiaries and the communities that you're serving. And I just want to reiterate that the UN Trust Fund is very proud to be able to support this kind of work. And for all of our small grant organizations, they're entitled to the self-care funds that will help in staff to avoid staff burned out and also to improve organizational resilience. So thank you so much for this intervention, and we're very happy that you're able to be with us today.
Thank you.
Are you all ready to take a trip to Mexico? Sierrena's horticultural initiative for women's economic empowerment during COVID-19 that continue until today caught our attention. But the work that this organization is doing to tackle racism, gender norms, and all forms of violence against indigenous women in Mexico needs to be heard. Sylvia Perez is with us today and will tell us more about all the aspects of leading an inclusive initiative to end violence against women and girls. The floor is yours, Sylvia.
Necesito traducción en español. ¿Quiere esta cosa? Solicito traducción en español. No sé. ¿Qué pasó? ¿Se fue el internet o qué?
Yes, Sylvia, we will translate into English. Don't worry.
Sí necesito traducción en español, por favor.
Sí.
¿Ya está?
Sí.
¿Ya puedo hablar? ¿Tiene traducción en español? Mi nombre es Silvia Pérez Yescas, de la Organización Indígena Zapoteca, de la Organización Mujeres Indígenas por Ciarena. Somos parte del contexto de la situación de violencia que se vive en nuestra región, en nuestro estado, en nuestro país. La presencia del crimen organizado, el consumo de cristal, ahora en niños indígenas y jóvenes indígenas, va en aumento. El desdén de las autoridades locales, estatales y federal en contra del trabajo de las organizaciones de defensa de derechos humanos. Mujeres Indígenas por Ciarena está siendo perseguida por autoridades locales y regionales por visibilizar y exigir la justicia para las niñas y las mujeres. Con la situación de la pandemia, se agudizó la violencia contra las niñas y las mujeres. Gracias al proyecto con ONU Mujeres, pudimos rescatar a varias víctimas y poder trasladarlas. Tenemos que estar en constante búsqueda de recursos para poder asegurar la vida de las niñas y las mujeres. Ciarena ha constatado asesinatos de niñas y de niños, de mujeres indígenas. Afortunadamente se cuenta con una joven psicóloga indígena que ha podido detectar el abuso contra niños. La situación de no tener una atención adecuada con pertenencia cultural desde las autoridades por la discriminación que seguimos viviendo, que es una constante contra las mujeres y niñas indígenas, es un reto muy grande para Ciarena. También hemos tenido algunos logros. Yo estoy hablando a grandes rasgos porque no me permitieron tanto tiempo. Uno de los logros fue poder dar formación a mujeres y niñas con herramientas para su defensa. Nosotras desde Ciarena trabajamos con una metodología propia. Otro logro fue el traslado de víctimas sin importar la hora, sea de día, sea de noche, sea de madrugada, para poder trasladar y salvaguardar la vida de las mujeres y las niñas. Pero hay una situación, urge espacios específicos de atención inmediata con médicos, psicólogas, abogadas, pero de manera constante en nuestra región. Los logros fue la alianza con organizaciones y redes de mujeres indígenas a nivel regional y estatal. El poder trabajar la violencia, abordar el tema de violencia desde el pensamiento y desde la mirada de mujeres indígenas, desde nuestra cosmovisión, ha sido muy buena para nosotras para poder a proteger de alguna manera la vida de las víctimas. Hay una situación también muy importante que es el lograr y buscar el empoderamiento de las mujeres indígenas. ¿Cómo podemos lograr el empoderamiento? Nosotras hemos dado cuenta que el empoderamiento para las mujeres es desde la situación económica. Si las mujeres son las que ejercen la economía en la casa y tienen el poder económico, pueden tener autonomía. Lo vimos, por ejemplo, con el tema de los huertos de traspatio, las hortalizas. Esto le permitió a ellas no solo el consumo para un alimento sano, sino también para poder vender un poco de esos productos. Pero no podemos dejarlo ahí. Yo creo que hay que buscar más alternativas porque las mujeres necesitan autonomía. No hay autonomía si ellas no tienen el poder económico en sus manos. La situación con mujeres indígenas de Serena es grave. Tenemos persecución, tenemos amenazas ahora en este momento, pero no podemos quedarnos calladas ni podemos dejar de trabajar. Yo me atrevo a hacer una recomendación. Primero que nada, tenemos que continuar trabajando. Y tenemos que establecer el pensamiento de mujeres indígenas de Siarena es establecer con fundaciones como ONU Mujeres y organizaciones de base comunitarias, acciones y metas a largo plazo para buscar juntas cómo erradicar la violencia hacia las mujeres y las niñas. También desde Mujeres Indígenas de Siarena pedimos la accesibilidad para poder adquirir los fondos y poder seguir trabajando, pero con formatos sencillos que nosotras, las mujeres indígenas, podamos entender. No podemos estar siempre en los tiempos que se nos piden porque nosotras trabajamos en comunidades donde no hay señal, donde si llueve los ríos crecen y no podemos cruzar, donde se quedan, donde los vehículos que hacen el traslado no pasan. Entonces, desde Siarena, yo les mando el saludo y quiero que sepan que Siarena, por ser parte del contexto, trabaja con todo el corazón, con toda sinceridad y con toda honestidad. Gracias.
Thank you so much, Sylvia, for this very powerful intervention. And I know that you are able to just really mention the highlights, but thank you so much for bringing to attention the very complex issue about intersecting forms of discrimination and violence against Indigenous women, girls, and on top of all the accessibility to essential services for Indigenous women and girls, but also the access to funding for organizations like Siarena to lead the important work that your organizations and organizations like yours have the unique position to, which is to have access to the hardest to reach communities and serve these hardest to reach communities. I would also like to mention how you put a question, how to empower Indigenous women, and your answer is economic power. Results from our grantee have consistently shown the link between financial independence and better access to resources and greater security, including protection from violence. And such activities that Siarena was leading holds so much potential, and we're very happy to hear about that. And lastly, I would just like to quote you actually when you were saying two very important quotes that echoes with us very much, that we cannot stay silent and we cannot stop working. And it is exactly the motto that we need and the souvenir that we will bring with us after this intervention. Thank you so much for sharing with us and letting us on this journey with you. For our next part of the presentation, I would like to introduce our next presenter, Hidia. During 2022, one of the key adaptations undertaken by several grantee organizations was extending the use of technology in their activism to prevent and end violence against women and girls. Qatar has been developing a mobile app, Safeness, in co-creation with women and girls living with disabilities in Tunisia to increase their safety in public spaces. We're very excited to hear more about this from Hidia Belhaj Youssef. The floor is yours, Hidia. Welcome.
Thank you. Merci. Bonjour tout le monde. Donc voilà notre projet qui s'appelle Pour que l'invisible soit visible. Il traite de la violence fondée sur le genre contre les personnes avec handicap visuel et auditif. Le problème de la violence contre les personnes handicapées est toujours une question taboue. Donc c'est un défi majeur. En Tunisie, bien sûr, parce que culturellement, on ne peut pas admettre qu'une personne handicapée puisse être sujet de violence. Mais malheureusement, il y a beaucoup de violence contre ces personnes et surtout que les personnes mal et non-voyantes et les personnes sourdes et muettes n'ont pas accès aux services justement pour les personnes victimes de violence, vu leur handicap. Il y a un autre défi, c'est que ces personnes-là n'ont pas accès à leurs droits, elles ne connaissent pas leurs droits, elles ne connaissent pas les lois en Tunisie et elles n'ont pas accès aux services dans les centres d'écoute et surtout dans les centres d'hébergement. D'où voilà l'importance de notre projet qui a pour justement objectif de réhabiliter 2 centres d'hébergement pour les personnes mal et non-voyantes, sourdes et muettes, de développer aussi un guide de prise en charge des personnes handicapées pour que les prestataires de services puissent justement pouvoir prendre en charge ces personnes et pour pouvoir justement savoir comment les aborder, comment les écouter pour les orienter. Et aussi, on a essayé de faire du renforcement des capacités des personnes handicapées avec un handicap auditif et visuel pour leur faire connaître leurs droits en Tunisie et surtout la loi 58 de lutte contre la violence fondée sur le genre. Donc, on a aussi, puisqu'on a un grand volet d'utilisation de la nouvelle technologie, donc nous avons une plateforme de vulgarisation des lois et droits en Tunisie avec des questions-réponses et avec une certaine explication de ces termes juridiques et des lois. On l'a rendu accessible aux personnes mal et non-voyantes et on est en train de traduire en langage de signes tout le contenu de cette plateforme et elle sera accessible et ouverte aux personnes avec handicap aussi auditif. Donc, parmi justement les difficultés que nous avons rencontrées, c'est surtout le renfermement des associations des sourds et muettes et des personnes mal et non-voyantes. Elles ne font pas confiance aux autres facilement. Donc, ça, d'une, de deux, il y a ce tabou vis-à-vis de la violence. Les personnes avec handicap ne divulguent pas justement facilement quand elles sont sujets de violence. Autre difficulté, le manque de références en Tunisie en ce qui concerne cette thématique et le manque aussi même d'experts dans la recherche, dans l'élaboration des guides et ainsi de suite. Malgré ces difficultés, on a des réussites. Et parmi les réussites, c'est le développement de l'application, justement de l'application Safeness, qui est une application téléphonique qui permet aux personnes de justement se faire accompagner virtuellement par des personnes de confiance qu'elles choisissent pour justement, elle partage son itinéraire avec cette personne et cette personne pourrait justement l'accompagner virtuellement. L'application aussi permet de lancer des appels de secours, donc juste en secouant le téléphone et des alertes partent pour les 5 personnes de confiance que la personne ait choisi déjà. En plus, si la personne ouvre, bien sûr, les personnes averties, quand elles ouvrent l'application, elles vont trouver justement l'emplacement où se trouve la personne, mais elles peuvent aussi écouter tout ce qui se passe pour cette personne et elles pourront intervenir en appelant la police ou en se déplaçant sur place. Parmi justement les leçons apprises dans ce projet-là, c'est qu'il faudrait travailler davantage avec les personnes handicapées elles-mêmes, les insérer et essayer de garantir leur insertion dans l'implémentation justement de ce projet, de prendre leur avis, mais pas seulement de prendre leur avis, mais qu'elle soit une partie prenante pour garantir la réussite de ce projet et de savoir et de connaître leurs besoins. Ce que nous avons aussi accompli que nous avons eu comme lesson learned aussi, c'est de travailler davantage sur les personnes qui font la traduction en langage de signes, parce qu'en Tunisie, par exemple, il n'y a pas seulement une seule langue tunisienne de signes, mais plusieurs dialectes, et il faudrait avoir un consensus. Mais aussi de travailler sur aussi les positions des traducteurs de langage de signes, parce que nous avons remarqué aussi, et ça fait partie des leçons apprises, qu'elles interviennent lors de leur traduction, elles prennent position et parfois elles font de la censure vis-à-vis des personnes avec handicap auditif. Et du coup, on a justement changé un peu le projet et nous nous sommes concentrés pour travailler davantage sur les traducteurs en langage de signes. Donc, voilà en résumé ce que nous avons pu accomplir en 2022. Actuellement, nous sommes en train de développer le gadget qui sera justement lié sur le Bluetooth de l'appareil téléphonique et comme ça, SafeNess ne sera pas… Donc, la personne pourrait utiliser SafeNess et lancer des appels de secours sans toucher au téléphone. Et donc, nous sommes dans la phase finale du développement de ce gadget et nous espérons déjà toucher d'ici 2024 plus que 10 000 personnes, dont un tiers seront des personnes avec handicap visuel et auditif. Et merci.
Thank you so much, Hidia, for your intervention.
J'espère que je n'ai pas dépassé
Thank you so much. Obviously, as you were, no worries. As you mentioned, even though violence against women, girls living with disabilities is not new, the lack of visibility on this issue obviously is a big barrier to ending violence against women, girls living with disability, and hence the name of your project. I very much love it. And in case our audience has not heard it, it is making the invisible visible, because the visibility is very important here. It's very absolutely impressive how Qatar's project has been able to not only putting women, girls living with disability at the center of your work, but also as partners and co-creators of the organization's activities, and as seen with the SafeNess app. And we absolutely love it and love how you have been able to make it at the core, and it is at the core of inclusive and participatory programming. And I find it absolutely very impressive also that they're still striving for better accessibility, for SafeNess app, for the technology facilitated solution that your organization has been leading. And it shows how the organization still continues to ensure inclusiveness and intersectionality, and also the accessibility for all women and girls to live free from violence. Thank you so much, Hidia. What a great journey we've gone through together. We have flown around the world across 5 regions. And I would like to thank all of our speakers for letting us on their journeys in ending violence against women and girls in different contexts and showing us how this work changes life. I see that the chat has been very active with interventions, for different introductions. And I would like to remind you that you can continue this conversation through the live chat by using the hashtag UNTFAR22. We would also like to continue the discussion with you on Shine, a global knowledge exchange hub on ending violence against women and girls, as you can see here on the screen with the QR code. And this hub is co-created with the Spotlight Initiative. You can visit Shine and become a member by scanning the QR code now on the screen and simply writing shinehub.org if you would like. And also, please do not forget to enter in the chat and bring your questions and intervention and share your experiences as well of how your organization has been doing in 2022. In the next part of our program today, my dear colleague Adina will walk us through the impact from civil society-led work on the lives of women and girls during 2022. And in Vet Fundir, with many lessons learned and important highlights, we are thrilled to show you evidently in a Pecha Kucha inspired fashion. Adina, take it away.
Great, thank you, Zia. Hi, everyone. We hope you found these presentations from our grantees enriching and inspiring. I'm pleased to share with you now some overall results from the UN Trust Fund from last year. In 2022, globally, violence against women and girls remained the most widespread human rights abuse in a year that was marked by escalating conflict and a further shrinking of civic spaces. Pushback on women's rights and feminist movements is on the rise across every region of the world. These are rights that were acquired thanks to the trailblazing efforts of civil society organizations and women's rights organizations, whose work is a central focus of the UN Trust Fund support. 2022 was also the second year of the implementation of the UN Trust Fund Strategic Plan 2021-2025, which saw the continued commitment to providing core, flexible, and multi-year funding to civil society and women's rights organizations as key drivers of the women's rights and feminist movements. The UN Trust Fund support is guided by the principle of leaving no one behind, implemented through an intentional and proactive intersectional approach. This means that our support to localized initiatives results in changing the lives of women and girls who are often hardest to reach, including women in the lowest income groups, Indigenous women and girls, survivors of violence, women and girls living with disabilities, those who are disabled, those living with or affected by HIV and AIDS, and many others. Throughout 2022, it was clear that flexible core and adequate resourcing is crucial for civil society and women's rights organizations' organizational resilience to navigate the compounded impacts of global and local crises, and also in context of overlapping uncertainty. Building resilience includes both organizational efforts to adapt risk management systems and donor adaptations and grant-giving practices that acknowledge civil society and women's rights initiatives in prioritizing women's safety and empowerment in all circumstances. The results of civil society and women's rights organizations are captured using 21 common indicators, 5 of which specifically focus on grantees' adaptations to the impact of COVID-19, which have been used over the past several years to measure common results, including adaptations during and in the wake of crises. Complementing what you've heard already today, in 2022, our grantees achieved significant results through context-based adaptations, which recognize that co-creation with community members proved to be catalytic for enhancing collective preparedness and institutional changes. And investment in self and collective care emerged as an effective way to enable organizational reflection and analysis of their resilience needs. Throughout 2022, UN Trust Fund supported projects provided specialist support services or worked together with service providers to meet the needs of survivors and those at risk of violence. In Tunisia, Association Femmes Juristes, a small women-led organization, welcomed 260 women at its Manera Center, where they can seek psychosocial, healthcare, and justice support. We know that violence against women and girls is preventable, and UN Trust Fund grantees work to make this a reality. In Eswatini, grantee Swaga worked with over 700 community members and over 600 girls living with disabilities to prevent and respond to violence escalated by civil and political unrest. Grantees in 2022 also engaged with policymakers to advocate for the implementation and an adoption of more gender-responsive and inclusive laws and policies. In the state of Palestine, the Grantee Women Affairs Technical Committee engaged informal justice actors, traditional leaders, and civil society actors in open dialogue and provided training on how to provide comprehensive information services and uphold the rights of survivors of violence. In 2022, grantees also made conscious efforts to mainstream intersectional approaches to empower and end violence against the hardest to reach women and girls. COVI in Cote d'Ivoire created 193 anti-violence community circles that reach nearly 400 self-identified women sex workers in 30 areas while providing treatment to women living with HIV. Further, an important component of the UN Trust Fund's partnership with its grantees is capacity development, where individual accompaniment and comprehensive training are provided, and such training led to 55% of respondents to the UN Trust Fund's annual grantee survey reporting that they were able to mobilize more funding to continue, replicate, or scale up their projects with the UN Trust Fund. 2022 was also an exciting year for enriching the ecosystem with civil society-led voices through practice-based knowledge. We hope that you've all turned in for our first ever podcast, Pathways to Prevention, and a number of other knowledge products that created entry points for the UN Trust Fund to promote practice-based knowledge. Finally, in 2022, over 1,600 organizations ready and willing to put an end to violence against women applied for the call for proposals, totaling $756 million in requests spread across 113 countries. The increased need in funding from these organizations during the year is a testament to the continued violation of human rights at the expense of women's bodies, dignity, safety, and freedom. It's been a busy but impactful year for the UN Trust Fund and its grantees. These are efforts that are made possible thanks to the sustained support of our generous donors, partners, and contributors. Thank you so much for your trust and support. Back to you, Zia.
Thank you so much, Adina, for recapping perfectly our results and achievements of our grantee partners throughout 2022. What a year. And I do want to reiterate the point made that the organizational resilience requires efforts from donors to adapt their grant giving practices to ensure civil society and women's rights organizations have the resources and support they need to continue their life-saving work at local levels. And the UN Trust Fund is proud to have been providing this support through core, flexible, and long-term funding. We're also very proud to continue our commitment to continuing collaboration, mutual empowerment, and learning with our civil society and women's rights organizations partners. I hope you have found today's webinar and Pecha Kucha inspired presentations insightful. Please do check out our annual report with the QR code on the screen, or follow the link in the chat, or on our UN Trust Fund website. You can also join and continue the conversation on Shine Hub. And thank you so much for joining us and engaging with us with our event. I know that we're a little bit early. I do want to open the floor for maybe 5 minutes if anybody would like to raise any questions or would like to share in Pecha Kucha fashion very quickly your maybe perhaps a couple words or phrases that your organization was overcoming in 2022 and would like to share with our audience. I see a lot of comment here in our chat about how you're living the presentations. A lot of the photos are great. The interventions was very powerful and incredible. Thank you so much for engaging and for your support. And if there's no questions, please do know that you can still tweet us on Twitter, use the hashtag UNTFAR22 and continue the conversation on Twitter on Shine Hub, and also check out our annual report on our website. Thank you so much and have a great rest of the day wherever you are. Thank you and looking forward to more events in the future. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Stay in touch. Let's connect on Shine.
for sure.